Welcome to the Sabre Coach Kate podcast, where I highlight the great athletes, thinkers, referees, and coaches in the dynamic sport of Olympic fencing.
Guard. Well,
Terrence Lasker was one of your run-of-the-mill teenagers who wanted a job working with computers someday. When a magnet high school opened in Kansas City, he jumped at the chance to study in their state-of-the-art computer science program. What he didn't expect was turning that passion into a lifelong love of fencing. After being wooed by the promise of travel to international competitions, and thanks to their focus on Olympic sports, Terrence learned from one of the greatest saber coaches of all time, Vladimir Nazlymov. Under Nazlymov's guidance and with the help of teammates, such as Jeremy Summers, Terrence became a 5-time national champion, 4-time member of the U.S. national team, and was first alternate for the U.S. Olympic fencing team in 1996. He was the assistant fencing coach at Ohio State from 2003 to 2008 and has been coaching at Nellya Fencers since 2008. Tune in today to hear the amazing story of a normal, nerdy teenager who became one of saber fencing's top athletes and coaches. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Sabre Coach Kate podcast. I have as my guest today, Terrence Lasker. Terrence, thank you so much for taking the time to be interviewed today.
It's my pleasure, Kate. I'm excited to be interviewed by you.
Well, as I was doing research about you, you had a really interesting childhood, especially, that led to some really important things for you later on. So can you tell me what life was like for you growing up in Kansas City?
It was pretty normal, if that's a thing. 2 parents, married. They loved me. I was an only child for the first 10 years of my life. Mm-hmm. And I had my grandparents lived right next door to me. So I was well cared for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the magnet high school you attended was a pretty interesting project that the city put together. Can you talk about that?
Yes, it was a desegregation program, and it was designed to bring in kids from the suburbs into the inner city schools and to help with diversity in the inner city schools. So it was a very, very big project, and all of the inner city schools got overhauled. It was about a $3 billion project that involved getting new teachers, new facilities, and also the special thing about magnets were they all specialized in particular subjects. Mm-hmm. So the thinking was to start specialization earlier and get you kind of set on a career path. So we had an arts magnet where you could go for theater and performing arts, those kinds of things. The magnet that I went to was computer science, and classical Greek. So
interesting.
A very interesting mix, pretty much the polar opposites of what you would imagine. But it was a great school, and things went well.
Well, during my reading, it seems like they spent $33 million on your high school. What were some of the things that were put into place with all of that funding?
We had an Olympic-sized swimming pool with all of the bells and whistles of a very elite program, meaning that we had the viewing for divers where you could go underwater, and there was a little room where we could record, your entry into the water if you were diving. And we had one of the best weightlifting facilities. After being at Ohio State, I know what a good weightlifting facility looks like, and ours rivaled theirs.
Wow.
Great, of course, basketball courts and all of those things. But one of the odd things is that we had a gymnastics gym, a full sort of 12,000 square foot gymnastics facility was a part of our school. And that's definitely not a normal thing for an average high school to have. So, yeah, we definitely had things that were quite amazing. And I that was just my school, so I can't even imagine the things that were in place at other schools. Like we had a medical magnet and a math and science magnet, so it was pretty great.
Were sports really emphasized on all of those campuses?
No.
Okay.
It was only on ours, and actually only on half of the campus. Like I said, we were split with computer science. So one half of the school was, their goal was to be completely paperless, which I can tell you did not happen, but there were computers in every classroom. There were computers in every classroom, but there was not, it was not paperless. And I actually would have only had to take one PE class for my entire 4 years of high school. So because I was actually on the computer science side of the school, I was not into sports. Surprise.
Well, that leads me to ask, why am I talking to a fencing coach and not to a computer scientist? What happened that got you interested in the fencing program?
Well, as a freshman, you have to take a survey of Olympic sports just because you are at that school. So it doesn't matter what side you're on, you have to take that survey. And it would have been my only PE class. And just by luck of rotation, the fencing coach was my first, he was the first one in the rotation. Mm-hmm. And his job was to teach us fencing, badminton, table tennis, and like racquetball or something. So obviously he was a lot better at being the fencing coach. So so that part probably stood out more than anything else. And I was one of the kids that really paid attention and really wanted to do well in the class overall. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed the fencing. So it really took off from there.
So you're telling me that the great Vladimir Nazlymov was teaching racquetball as well?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Vladimir at that time.
Got it. Okay. Because I
was another.
Wait a minute. I can't imagine. He's good, but I can't imagine him being a multi-sport kind of guy.
Oh, no, he is. That's for sure. Okay. When he did arrive at the school, he did teach all of those things. He taught volleyball and on occasion, basketball, but at first it was a guy named Steve Butler.
Got it.
And he's the one that lured me onto the fencing team with promises of travel. Like I said, I wasn't there for athletics. I really had a set path with computer science I was really excited about. So I did turn him down at first. And then, he said, we will travel more than any other team at this school. I promise you that. And I said, okay, fine. I'll give it a try.
What was it about the travel that appealed to you so much?
Well, I'd not really done a lot of travel. And growing up, I think it was one of the things that my mom kind of instilled into me that would be something that she would have wanted to do more of growing up and as a young person. Okay. She would talk about places that she would have liked to visit, but didn't have the chance or opportunity. So it stood out as something important for me to do.
And a good means to be able to do it, especially on somebody else's dime.
Yes.
Yeah. So how long did you spend with your first coach? Your first fencing coach?
Steve Butler?
Yeah.
He was the main coach for the first maybe month or 2 months of the program at Central High School. So school started in September, and by November, Vladimir was there.
Okay. Then why did the school decide to bring him on?
In part because of Steve. Steve knew who he was, and Vladimir wanted to have sort of a fresh start when he came to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like a good fit for him to start where there was no fencing at all.
Sure. What was Nazlymov's coaching style like?
Well, I don't know. With me, I feel he explained a lot of things. There was a lot of why we do certain things,
Mm-hmm.
that I feel that, maybe a lot of coaches don't really give a lot of the whys. They just let you know this is how it's done, and kind of push through a routine. I felt like he took a little bit of extra time to explain why, but I also noticed that he didn't do that with all of his athletes. So I got to watch him coach pretty closely later on, and as we grew together, and the things that he did with the younger generations behind me, and I started to realize that he was doing things pretty specific to the individual, for the individual. He knew that I was very cerebral,
Mm-hmm.
and I enjoyed the thought process of fencing more than doing it, actually. So I think he pulled out the things that he felt were important to me, and that would, keep me engaged and moving forward.
Something I found really interesting in this article that I found about your school experience was it mentioned Jeremy Summers, who is one of the main medical people for U.S. fencing now. He went to your school and was an avid soccer player who changed to fencing the day after the soccer coach quit. Both you and he underwent this incredible fencing transformation about a year into your career. What was it exactly that Maestro Nazlymov did so that you could have such a big transformation in such a short amount of time?
Honestly, Kate, we worked really, really hard, and he had access to us pretty much, definitely 5 days a week, and many times twice a day, because we did have a club, so we had practice after school. But like I said, the school specialized in sports. So if you were on the Greek side of the school, you actually had class time that was dedicated to your sport, whatever it was. So he had access to work with us during school and then after school. So there was, we spent a lot of time working. And I thought everyone practiced the way that we practiced.
Yeah, everyone does two-a-days. Why not?
It was my first time, so I hadn't really seen anything outside of what we did. So it seemed normal to me.
Mm-hmm. Did you do any cross-training? Like, were you doing any weightlifting or running or anything besides fencing skills?
Early on, I mean, we always did throughout. We played a lot of soccer, and Jeremy, of course, killed it at soccer.
Yeah.
And I've found that in my own coaching, having a soccer background is extremely helpful. So if anyone's looking to do some cross training, I would recommend soccer.
Is it for stamina?
Not so much for the stamina, actually for the coordination, for the footwork, and the skills that you use to control the ball are extremely helpful in giving you that footwork and tempo change, sort of, picking your opponent out. Very helpful.
Huh, I never thought about that.
Yes, a couple of my athletes were very successful soccer players prior to fencing. Both of the Johnson sisters, Lena and Victoria, both soccer players.
Huh, really interesting. And what were practices like? I mean, if you were meeting with him twice a day, was it kind of the same thing, or would there be different emphasis for each practice session?
A lot of the times during the day, it was only a lesson, but our practices were usually quite similar. Just your basic things. So wasn't anything. After having traveled now and seeing what a lot of people do around the world, I would say that it's not very different than anything that anyone else is doing.
Sure.
Of course, being led by him, and the things that he really emphasized were really to relax and think.
Yeah. I did find in that article that he only knew one English word at the very beginning of his time at your school, and it was relax. So he kept telling everyone to do it. What sort of an impact does fencing in a relaxed state have? Because especially in Sabre, I mean, you got to be, pretty energetic out there, yet how are you relaxed, and how does that help?
Well, we learned that relax means so many things, so much more than just relax, because it is true. He asked the translator about relax, and that's pretty much all he said to us for a few months into our first meeting. So he took that one word and used it for pretty much everything, and I do too now. I find that I probably use the word relax 10 or 20 times in every single lesson, and it's unavoidable. So it meant a lot back then. It was a way to say, everything's okay, be confident, slow down, don't be nervous, don't be tense. It meant everything. So it's a very powerful word, and I think that he made it that way to me, and I continue in his footsteps in making it important to my athletes. But I think ultimately the translation would probably be more as be confident than actually relaxing.
Got it. It's really interesting to hear you explain it, because at national competitions, I've heard you say it to your fencers, and you certainly were not relaxed when you said it. I mean, it's more like, relax. And I remember thinking, well, you're not really giving off that relaxed vibe, Terrence. But now that I understand that there are so many levels of meaning to that one word, now I understand what your fencers are interpreting that as. It's certainly not relaxing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not like, get the lounge chair out there and a margarita with an umbrella.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah. So you gave up college fencing scholarships after you graduated in order to stay in Kansas City and to train with Maestro Nazlymov. You did eventually go to college. You mentioned Ohio State, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you never got to fence for a college team. Do you have any regrets about not having that collegiate experience as an athlete?
No, I don't have any regrets about it. I look back on the path that I took, and I definitely feel that things happen for a reason. And having sat on the other side of collegiate fencing, I do feel like I've gotten enough experience, even though I wasn't on the strip representing a school. Coaching for Ohio State and my time there definitely gave me, those feelings of being on the team and being a part of the team and experiencing that environment. So I don't really feel like I missed out on something.
Mm-hmm. It was a pretty interesting situation after you graduated, too, because the school district recognized that you had Olympic potential. And so didn't they allow you to keep training with Maestro Nazlymov even after you graduated?
I did, but they did not help or facilitate that in any real way.
Okay, got it.
Actually, a sad thing about that program is that it was wildly successful across the board in terms of, doing what they set out to do, especially in our school with the sports program. So many great athletes came out of that school, in not only in fencing but in weightlifting and diving. A lot of my classmates went on to become Olympians, which I would definitely say that things were successful.
Yeah, definitely.
So it was pretty sad that the program was cut the year after I graduated. A lot of the funding was cut, and a lot of the programs kind of fell by the wayside. As in our school and across the board in a lot of the other schools as well. After, I think about 2 years after I graduated, I actually went back to teach the fencing course because Vladimir wasn't there anymore, and they really didn't have the funding for a lot of programs. So I went back, and I taught the class for free.
Oh, wow. And what changes did you notice at the school between the time that you graduated and when you returned as an alum?
Wow, it was like night and day. The facilities, the upkeep wasn't what it once was. The staff was not that great. It was a completely different school. It was a great facility, a great building, but without those key teachers that that really cared and were also having a good salary.
Right.
It was a different place. Right. It was a different place, and it was really sad to see because it did seem successful, and I know that they took the magnet program and moved it across the country, but it wasn't so much in inner city schools. It was just pretty much all schools kind of started to specialize.
You mentioned that several Olympians came out of this program. Do you remember any of their names?
I should know this, but I don't. I know for sure that we had a diver, but I cannot remember his name. And we had a national champion weightlifter, and then there's myself and Jeremy and Sean Bates, all of us national champions at different times in different categories.
I'd forgotten that Sean Bates was part of that program as well.
Yes. Yes, in 1995, he arrived in the fall of 91, and in 1995, the entire junior national team was from our inner city high school, Kansas City, Missouri.
Wow, that's incredible. So who else was on that team?
It was myself, Jeremy Summers, and Sean Bates.
Wow.
That was in the days.
That's really impressive. I mean, to think that your school was able to produce a whole junior national team. Wow.
Yes, it was amazing. And now, and kind of looking back, I understand we were working harder than everyone else, but also, we had Vladimir, and I definitely feel like he's one of the best coaches in the world. You
are not the only person that has said that, so yeah, he's pretty incredible. We're going to move on now past your high school years. And again, while I was doing reading, it said that you weren't able to qualify for 2 Olympics because you didn't have the funding to travel to the necessary international events. In your opinion, what should the fencing community do to help promising athletes attain their goals?
Well, for one, I would like to say, to have the record clear, in 1996, I was not ready. I was high in the ranking in the U.S., but I was not ready to be on the 1996 Olympic team.
Got it.
And in 2000, the rules were changed, so that only eight teams would qualify at World Championships for the Olympics.
Okay.
Whereas in the past there had been 12, and we were a solid number 10 team.
Okay.
And we finished at World Championships. And so we didn't qualify a team for 2000, which did make it extremely important to make it to every World Cup. And at that point, I did not have enough. I did not have enough funding to make it to every World Cup. So,
well, and that's a common problem for many of our athletes. They have to find another job, modeling or coaching or something, just because we don't have the professional aspect to our sport. Is there anything you think that our sport could do to help those promising athletes achieve their goals?
Definitely. I had a lot of feelings after my situation, and I was upset with U.S. fencing, and I didn't feel supported. And I know that things are definitely changing. They're moving in the right direction. And I know that a lot of top athletes do have funding, but like with what you were saying, there's a lot of young athletes that are trying to get to the point where they may be funded, but just getting there, it takes quite a bit of funding.
Right.
So it's kind of a catch-22. If you to be at the top, you've got to have paid quite a bit to get there. So I don't know exactly what the answer is. I know that there's a lot of foundations out there that are trying to support young athletes and help them. But the way things are in the U.S., there's just, you have to have some means. And I don't think that it's right. I think that the mission statement is, that we're putting forth the best athletes to represent the country. And I think that's the spirit of the Olympic Games and World Championships. And your income should not play a role in that. But in sport, things cost. So we don't have the infrastructure just yet to be able to help athletes that are talented that don't have the funding. A lot of them get lost before they even realize their talent. So,
what would you consider your own greatest fencing accomplishment?
Well, my favorite, the thing that stands out the most to me is my top 8 finish at the Moscow World Cup.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun. It was a great day. Sadly, Vladimir wasn't there with me, but it was actually, I think, one of the first events that I traveled to by myself, and I was in my 20s. So it was he was by my side all the time. So it was weird to go and fence without him, but I fenced with a couple of guys who were junior world champions, and I got by them, and I ended up losing to make the 4 with Diachenko, who was yes, he served on the Russian national team, at the time. So it was a great time for me. I had a wonderful tournament. I think I fenced really well, and I think it made my coach proud.
I'm sure you did. Let's talk about when you were an assistant coach at Ohio State. You were there from 2003 to 2008, and you've been coaching at Nellya ever since 2008. What was it like to be a coach at Ohio State, especially because you got to assist your mentor, Nazlymov?
It was a lot of fun. It was challenging in that, we took athletes from other coaches, so they already had a very strong base, and they were pretty much made, because at that point they're already 18, 19 years old, and they've been fencing for upwards of 5 years. So at that point, there's not a whole lot that we can do for them, except for, upkeep, try to keep them at least where they are, but to try to tear them down and rebuild them is really a waste of time, and it's going to hurt them more than help them.
Sure.
And what I learned in my time there is that a lot of athletes, they're moving on in their lives, and their fencing careers are usually starting to fade a little bit. And it doesn't matter if they're the top athlete in the country when they show up, because in the U.S. you're not going to be able to make money doing that. So they're there to make steps towards the rest of their lives, and usually fencing plays a very minor role in that, if any at all. So it was really sad for me, I believe in this sport and I love it with my whole heart. So it's hard to watch that love for the sport die out in a lot of athletes.
Is it just because they've been fencing for so long, or because...
No, it's really the pressure. It's really the pressure of the career and the next stages of their lives, simply because fencing, it won't pay the bills. And I think a lot of people would continue if there was a path where they could fence sort of more professionally. And the things that are possible now, they were not possible between 2003 and 2008. So a lot of kids come in as freshmen, they're super gung-ho, they're really excited, and those are the best. That's what you want as a coach, when you want kids to be excited to be at practice and excited to work with you. But by the time they're juniors and seniors, they're looking for the next great internship and classes. They're a lot more strict. They're a lot smaller. There's a lot less availability. So sometimes, they can't come to practice at certain times because they're only offering their class, the class that they need to graduate, the very specific course for their major. And we get in the way of that sometimes. And it's not a good feeling.
How did you learn to be a coach? Like, did you ever take any official classes, or was it simply watching your mentor?
It was mostly watching. I laugh because, I don't have any formal education in coaching. It was really watching Vladimir, and even when we started to work together at Ohio State, he saw what I was doing, and I really felt that he would say something if he didn't like what I was doing. But I also didn't have the courage to ask him. Strangely.
That's funny, because you had such a long-time relationship with him.
Oh, definitely. And we still have a great relationship. But yeah, it was weird to me as well, but I didn't ask him. But being here at Nellya, I did work on specifically coaching with Arkady. So I learned a lot from him in terms of just sort of the psychology of coaching, and of course, and the things that he feels are important. And there's a lot of similarities, a lot. Both of these guys definitely believe in hard work. So I think that's one of the reasons why we fit together so well. With different personalities.
Definitely. What was it like to change from coaching at a Div 1 college to within a club environment? Is there more stability with the athletes? What would be the major similarities and differences?
The similarities are really just the challenge of finding the keys to the athlete, right? You want to find what motivates them, what's gonna really click with them in terms of understanding, different concepts of strategy and all of that. So all of those things are very similar. One of the reasons that I decided make the move was so that I could work with young people who had never fenced before. At the collegiate level, you never get to work with anyone who's not had a coach already.
Well, not at the Div 1 level.
No, but I mean, the kids that come into the school, that was pretty much 90% of the job. We did have a small club that worked alongside, the things that we did with the school program, but it was very small and not a lot of young kids. Most of them were high schoolers that were looking to do something extracurricular sort of activities. So it wasn't a full scale, just a ton of little kids that are with little fresh faces that really wanted to find out what fencing is.
Yeah, and there is nothing better than getting that 8-year-old beginner and, they just want to be the next Jedi or pirate or whatever. And, you get to help them discover this incredible sport.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So that was really the major draw to making the move. And actually one of the first things that Arkady said to me when we were discussing me coming was, you had to be prepared. You had to be prepared to lose your athletes to college. And having been on that side and seeing what happens on the college side, I was not at all, upset about that. I felt that it was definitely something that they had to do, and I fully support it in a way. Like we discussed, I turned down a lot of scholarship offers, and I did not go that route myself. And, I don't regret it, but I think at the time I did not understand fully what I was giving up. So looking back, I definitely wouldn't change it, because I think, I had a great life and I had a great career, and things definitely turned out really, really wonderful. And I think that I'm definitely where I'm supposed to be in life, and I enjoy it. So I wouldn't change anything, that's for sure. But I feel like a child should have all of their options laid out for them, and then they can make a choice. So being here and having to understand that my athletes are going to leave and go to college, it's not something that I fight. So.
Well, and that is one of the very powerful things about our sport, because we spend a lot of time with these young people. And, we get to know them really well, because, we see them grow up and become young adults, and we spend, at least 10 years with them. And it's good that you have that perspective so that you can let your little babies go.
Yes. Yeah. I just try to give them a good foundation so that if they make it through those 4 years and they really want to continue with fencing, then they have what they need to do that. And then that's one of the things I tell them, when they're getting close to leaving, or in some cases when they've already left, because then they feel a conflict sometimes, and they feel that I really want them to fence, and that's the only thing that I want from them is fencing. But in reality, I just want them to do whatever makes them happy. So I've had conversations in both directions with athletes that have come to me, and they were completely honest, and they said, I could fence, but I think that I would only be doing it for Nellya or for you. And I said that it's never going to work that way.
Yeah.
So it's better for you to do whatever it is that you feel is important for this time in your life. Ultimately, I don't want you to have any regrets. If you're going to look back and say, oh my goodness, what if I had fenced? What if I had tried for that one last national team? Like, I definitely don't want that. So I do want you to think about it and take the decision seriously. But at the same time, don't have me in that equation. So, I just try to let them make their choices.
What's it like to coach at one of the country's Sabre powerhouses? I mean, I'm a Sabre fencer, and ever since I really got to know anything about fencing, my eyes have always been turned to Nellya, because Nellya produced, Seda Jacobson, the first, medal ever achieved by a female saber fencer at the Olympics. What is it like to be a part of the team that works there?
Wonderful, and challenging. We definitely strive for perfection, I suppose, in a way. But it's really about the execution and being motivating. Maestro, he frequently refers to a coach as sort of an actor in the theater, because our athletes, most of them are here 3 or 4 times a week. And if it's monotonous and it's kind of the same thing over and over again, of course, they're gonna get bored, and things tend to get dull. So he's always pushing us to be creative and to not, we kind of drive the energy in the practice. So he says, you've got to bring the energy with you. If you come to practice and you're dull and boring, then the kids are going to feel dull and bored. So, make sure that you come to practice and you're alive and you have a plan, and if you're excited about it, then they'll be excited about it. So, with that kind of guidance, and it makes it definitely fun and exciting. On the other side of that, we also get a lot of people think that we are all about winning. And I mean, we've even had our own athletes, we've had to have talks with our own athletes that say, I'm here, I'm at Nellya, and I feel like I let Nellya down if I don't do well, and these sorts of things, which is really awkward and surprising to us as on the staff, because we never talk about it. We never talk about winning. Of course, we have our banners and things like that, and we have a congratulations and those sorts of things when medals happen. But in our day-to-day sort of practice, winning is at the bottom of the list of things that we're doing and that we say to our athletes. Even listening to Arkady, he really wants everyone to have an authentic experience with fencing, and he knows the values that fencing innately, supports and pushes, and the idea of working hard, and the idea of being creative, work ethic. Those are the things that he really believes in and pushes through fencing. And that's all of us. He pushes it, and we all, we're all behind him. It's sad sometimes, is, even not only outsiders, even people on the inside who have, never heard us say something about winning. They feel that just because a lot of people who are here are successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and having that legacy, you'd feel like you had to live up to it.
Definitely. And I mean, we've definitely lost customers because of those kinds of things, but the people that stay with us definitely understand that that's not everything. It's not everything to us. It's not an agenda that we push or force on our athletes. We really just push them to be the best that they can, and to be confident. Ultimately, when I accepted my award, one of the things that I noted, because they talked a lot about my athletes that serve on the national team and that do really well in the country, but the ones that you never see on the podium and those things, I feel like those are the guys that really need me. a coach like me that's going to help them to believe in the decisions that they make and to be able to follow through with things and to, to leave here with a sense of self-worth and self-esteem that'll make them make better decisions in their lives outside of fencing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you keep mentioning as well the hard work aspect of things. As a coach, what is it that you look for in a fencer? Like when they're first starting, can you tell if they've got that special spark? Is it that they have a good work ethic? Is it that they're passionate about the sport? I mean, what is it that you kind of tune into?
Honestly, I'm looking for attention to detail. The kids that really stick out to me are the ones that are paying attention, and they really pay attention to the details of the things that I tell them. And that's a number one indicator for me personally. I know that other coaches see different things, but that's the number one thing that I'm looking for.
Like they're paying attention to their footwork or like how you correct them kind of thing?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And you can tell when a kid immediately understands what you're saying, and then some of them will take it to the next level sort of instantly, like, I'm supposed to make this movement a little bit smoother. So not only will they correct their feet, but they'll correct their hand and sort of that sort of attention. Okay. And then there's the kids that you can tell understand the game on a little bit deeper level than sort of the red light, green light kind of situation that we start with. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that really pop in my mind and that really catch my eye. Yeah, the attention to detail would be the number one thing that I look for in an athlete. Anything else, like it's pretty secondary. I feel like a lot of other things I can work on, but I like that. I know that we have a little bit of a head start if they've got that.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Before we started recording this interview, you mentioned that you travel pretty much every weekend during the fencing season because you're always going to tournaments and things like that. What do you like most about traveling and coaching your athletes at tournaments?
The bond. I would say the bond that it creates with the athletes. It's this a level of connection and a level of trust, and it's always challenging because it's always new and exciting, and obviously sometimes it's frustrating because they're an entire person and they have things that may be happening in their teenage lives that you have no idea about, that they're upset about, and it's affecting them. So it definitely keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So I enjoy that. I enjoy that, trying to figure it out, even though sometimes I want to pull my hair out, but it keeps me on my toes, keeps me working.
So when your athletes are competing, and I know that this is going to vary according to the different situations, but typically, how do you spend that 1 minute break in a DE? Are you giving them feedback on their own fencing? Are you telling them, hey, your opponent does X a lot? Are you telling them to relax? I mean, what is it that you're communicating out there?
It's definitely a mix, but I would say typically I want to point out whatever has lost them the most touches. Anything that I see that's being repeated, then I want to touch on it. If things are pretty equal, then I want to touch on one thing that their opponent is doing, and I want to touch on something that they are doing. Sometimes there's just so much stress around about that I won't even talk to them about fencing at all.
That's interesting.
I will just do everything that I can to either make them laugh or smile or just get their mind off of the bout at hand, and just give them one thought before they go back at the end of the minute break. Like, so, like you said, it definitely varies, but ultimately, one thing about their opponent, one thing about them, and just maybe a small adjustment that needs to be made for the remainder of the bout.
So what you're saying is every coach needs a list of dad jokes.
Dad jokes are not cool. I think I have to. Yes, dad jokes would definitely work with some of them for sure. It'd be helpful.
What books or articles or podcasts have you read or listened to that have had an impact on your coaching?
I read Mindset, and I also read Driven by I think the author's last name is Pink. But I studied psych in college, and because I thought that it would be the most helpful thing for coaching athletes. I thought psych would be the most helpful. So a lot of things from those classes and from those books have been extremely helpful. A lot of them sort of back up what most of us already think and feel about the way that an athlete should be thinking about their fencing and what they should be focusing on. So it's definitely great to hear those things echoed by those authors, and they've given me sort of maybe some more keys to add to my belt of things to say to my athletes to help them find what motivates them and what's important to them.
And what would you like to see from fencing in the future? Are there any changes that you'd like to see? Any rules that could be made to improve our sport?
I mean, I kind of go with the flow. I was not happy about the time change, the first time change, when it went from pretty wide open to almost épée timing. I was not happy with that. But then the fencing adjusted, and there was a time when it was not very nice to watch, and it was pretty upsetting. After 4 years of that, we adjusted, and the fencing was beautiful again, and everyone had pretty much accepted it. So then when we opened the timing again, not quite as much as it was, but to open it again, I was also not happy.
Change is hard.
I was also not happy, and I realize now that I enjoyed the fencing before a little bit better than it is right now today. I feel that the attack has a little too much priority. So I'm adjusting, and I'm teaching to that effect. So, I mean, ultimately, I think it's going to be fine. But for my taste, I think it's a little too open. But I'm sure that over time, the fencing will adjust. So.
Well, I mean, if we could adjust to all of the on-guard line changes, I think.
Oh my God.
Did I touch on a sore subject for you?
No, I just feel that it was ridiculous from the start, but I'm not gonna rant about it.
Yeah, that was an interesting season with so many changes all in one season.
Yes, yes.
All right, well, let's move on to the final part of the interview with the famous questions from James Lipton and Marcel Proust. You ready?
Sure, let's do it.
What is your favorite word?
My favorite word will have to be relax, and Vladimir did that to me. For reasons that I've already explained. It means so much.
Yeah, all those layers of meaning.
Yes.
What is your least favorite word?
I wish that it didn't have to do with fencing, but it does. It's the word remise. I don't like the word. And I believe that it's because it was introduced to me as someone going out of turn. So I felt that remise was already outside of, the rules, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it feels like cheating. It feels like, I don't know, I don't like it at all.
Yeah, like they're not taking their turn.
Yes, and I don't know. I have one of the things that I know that my coach knew about me, is that I like for things to be fair, and then that's extremely important to me. And it's one of the keys that he used to push me to sort of fight a little bit more for the things that I want, which, often it was to win a bout. So I would need to fight in order to do that. But prior to that, he knew that it was the most important thing for me to just understand that I was in some way smarter than my opponent, or I at least figured out what they were going to do. And it wasn't so important that I scored the touch. As long as I knew what they were going to do, I was pretty much satisfied.
Got it.
So he used the fairness, my affinity for things being fair, to push me to fight a little bit more for actually scoring the touch, not only being right about it.
What sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound of a really nice cut to the mask, a coaching mask. I think that's a really solid sound. Mm-hmm. It's got a good echo. It's crisp. It's short. I like it a lot.
And what sound or noise do you hate?
That's interesting. Probably the sound that a cat makes right before it pukes on your floor. Whatever that sound is, I do not like that sound at all.
The bad stuff is coming. Oh, man. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Man. I think I'd make a great lawyer.
Yeah, I've seen you out there talking to referees. I agree. It's interesting that you didn't say computer science, though, because that was your original goal in life.
Yes, and I still love it, and I dabble here and there with the new languages. They change so often, you can't get a foothold. But I do enjoy it. But I think that a lawyer would be a little bit more fun, because I found that I like interacting with people, which I didn't think that was me when I was growing up. I really enjoyed just being with the computer. I knew exactly what I was gonna get, and I don't know. There was something really, really comforting about that. So it was interesting that I grew up to work with people.
And what profession would you not like to do?
My goodness, there's so many that are not fun at all. But I think, honestly, I would not like to be a computer scientist. I would not like to write software. What I really thought I wanted to do with my life, I think that I would hate it now. Mm-hmm. For sure. I talked to my friends that, that completed the programs that I started, and, and they had those jobs. And no, I don't think I would want to trade places with them.
Where would you like to live?
Well, do I get to just make up a place, or should it be a place that definitely exists?
You can say whatever you like.
All right. So ultimately, I'd like to live in a place where my house is on a cliff overlooking an awesome view of water. It's a huge body of water, where there are amazing sunsets and great weather. That's where I would like to live. And then on the other side of that, I've got my fencing club and all of those things that come with my job that I love.
Awesome. A very complete answer. What do you value most in your friends?
I think I'm going to have to go with the cliche of trust. Trust is going to be the number one. Because what is a friend if you can't trust them?
Yeah. Who is your hero?
My hero. My hero would have to be my dad. He's just an amazing guy, and he's definitely the reason that I am who I am. Because at a pretty early age, he instilled in me a value of education that I think probably a lot of people take for granted. And it was really, really important to him because he didn't have the opportunity to go to school as much as he would have wanted. And so when I was growing up, he was definitely on top of me about my grades and about going to school and about taking it seriously. And I didn't really understand why until he explained it to me, and it really had an impact on me that made me understand a lot about who he is and about the sacrifices that he made, to be ultimately to be successful and to be a great dad.
Wow. And finally, what is your motto? Relax.
That's a great one. But I would have to say don't cut corners. You'll pay for it later.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Well, Terrence, thank you so much for this hour spent together. I've really enjoyed getting to know you a bit better.
It's my pleasure. I'm an open book, so anytime.
Well, I look forward to seeing you at the next NAC. I always enjoy fencing your fencers, and I also enjoy having my fencers fence your fencers.
Me too, for sure.
It's always a lot of fun. So, well, thank you again, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Kate.
Big thanks, first and foremost, as always, to my friend and teammate Tony Escueda, who edits all of these interviews and made the music for this podcast. Also thanks to my husband David, who is always so supportive of all of my crazy endeavors. Big thanks to everybody out there who listens regularly to these podcasts, or maybe not so regularly, and who contacts me through Facebook and Instagram to say how much you enjoy these interviews. I love hearing from you and would really appreciate any ideas on who to interview next, or what you'd like to find out from someone in the fencing world. You can get in touch with me through my Facebook page, through Instagram, and also at my blog at sabrecoachkate.wordpress.com. Now you can find all of the episodes of this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Google Play, and various other places around the internet. So check them out. Thanks again for listening.